The Matriarch of Avernus, the Lady Azimuth. Her magical planing skills summon demons through runes inscribed in human blood.
Post defeating Dejul the Energist and Bane the Druid, we return their offerings to the Circle, restoring their pillars, and once the now familiar ritual is complete, the spirit Ariel cryptically guides.
You must seek Azimuth the Planer at the heart of Avernus. 3 instruments await you to aid you in your quest, but first you must rise, and you must fall. And find your salvation in between.
And so we leave for Avernus with little more than a passing mention of 3 items that we must obtain. First, by rising, and then by falling. Ironic that the one who dispensed said advice has fallen so far. Taking up the bat form, we find ourselves by the now abandoned fortress in Dark Eden. We then enter a cave to the south that we'd noticed during our rugged climb to its peak. On the southeastern side of the cave, the wretched creatures still linger in the volcanic mass's outskirts. Leaving the ashen terrain, we then find a small vantage point to the broken city of Avernus, commenting,
Avernus consumed itself before my eyes.
To the south we see a horde of undead, perhaps the victims of Eden's outliers, re-risen to block our path. Their presence compels us to double our haste towards the smoking village ahead. Outside the walls of Avernus, we witness its denizens meander about as if unaffected by the bulk of their city burning about them, stopping to quickly feed with the aid of our armor, hacking off odd limbs and parading in a gust of crimson sustenance. It's only when we've had our fill of the almost hypnotized villagers, we then approach Avernus's walls, wary of the true danger its casual countenance belies, remarking,
The gate of Avernus opened slowly before me, daring me to cross the threshold. Who was I to reject such an invitation?
Entering the walls of this city, the facade remains almost wholly unmolested. Well, superficially. Much to our surprise, the guards sprang on us as if awaiting our arrival. As a quick aside, the city itself is quite sprawling, however we are driven to complete Kain's quest, and so shall be skipping the smaller residents that boast some items and wares that can be found scattered about. Instead, we make our way past the guards to the southeastern end of the town, in which rubble appears near the doorway, a sign of things to come. Inside we contend with 2 guards, their counterpart impaled in a shocking display. Clearly there was a far more insidious hand at play, and we begin to see the first pernicious effects in the basement below. Unlike the outer cloister of the city, the basement boasts an onslaught of mages and their homing energy bolts, forcing us to make the hard choice between the mist form to save our skin from sizzling in the muddy waters underfoot, or the magical barrier to protect us from the torrent of blasts from the unholy sorcerers. Coming out topside, we find we're met by a group of invisible spectres seemingly conjured by a symbol written in blood. Stepping outside, we then find that this is just the beginning of unholy conjurations, as we see before us the maleficent handiwork of a far more sinister threat at hand.
The city was paved in blood and flesh. Yet what would have appalled me in life only tempted me in death. Once I would have felt horror, now only hunger remained.
Stepping past the disemboweled corpse, again, the guards dutifully stand knee-deep in gore, awaiting our arrival, clearly in concert with whatever malevolent force had taken hold of the city. The outer cloister seemingly a ruse to the true depths of depravity that lie ahead.
Avernus lay in ruins before me. Whatever hand slaughtered its people ravaged the city as well. The beast paused for a moment, drooling in anticipation of the fine meal he saw before him. To his disappointment, he would not find me such easy prey.
It's then we see one of the causes of the city's destruction. Casting our magical barrier, we hack at the demon until it bursts into flames.
They picked us!
With bodies strewn about, we see our path forward is not in the defiled homesteads, but hidden between the cracks of the home it was guarding. Shifting to our mist form, we step through the wall. The beast inside, holding a citizen hostage, the other butchered and hung on the wall as a macabre prize. We dutifully sidestep the morbid scene in an almost imperceptible crack in the eastern wall. Again, we're faced with a troop of demonic figures spitting energy bolts and repeat the same puzzle the mages forced us in, this time in mist form, stalking our way through the narrow halls until we surface into an even grislier scene above. Exiting the maddening maze, we come face to face with an actual demon.
I felt its eyes upon me, eager, hungry, as if it longed to rip my heart out and eat it before me as I died. I laughed as the onslaught began. Perhaps, when it was over, it would be the other way around.
Resolving to somehow understand the source of this demonic invasion and to be their scourge, we pause, shifting into our own wolf form and race with tunnel vision ahead, remembering the guardian Ariel had spoken of, that to obtain the 3 items needed to fell Azimuth and her kin, we need first to rise and then fall. Entering its large doors, we find our instincts are wholly correct as a duo of hooded priests move to intercept our unwanted intrusion.
Avernus was a religious autocracy, with the cathedral as its dais of power. Though the city lay in ruins, the cathedral remained untouched. The demons knew better than to bite the hand that feeds them.
As irony would have it, unlike the city, the church's architecture remains somewhat pure, serene even. However, the dark intent of its new inhabitants and taint permeate to its core. The layout seemingly a maze of teleporters that require the most patience of mind to find the hidden switches. Pressing forward with the patience of a saint, unlike the demons, we dodge the deadly claws of the entities that claimed the structure for their own demented desire. But what did the former inhabitants seem to covet? The demonic entities didn't merely dwell here, but rather seemed to be searching for something powerful, hidden, and elusive that we certainly are destined to find first. It should be noted, in our southeastern room near the main hall is an easily missed exit to the south that leads to a hellish area laden with bone and gore. Inside the mass graves architecture, we find a bounty of items and spells to be replenished. Heading through the central path leads us to a single book, next to a skull and sword atop a dais, and holds an interesting bit of lore.
And Hashak Gix spoke unto the world. And Hashak Gix spoke unto the world, and all who heard trembled. Bring me your firstborn, and shed their blood upon the altar of the world, so that I may take nourishment from them. Do this without question, or suffer my wrath for eternity. And its will was done.
Back in the church's main nave, past the altar to the east, we enter a room with a picture of a serpentine sword, which is the first dungeon of the area, that of the Soul Reaver. As Ariel had correctly divined, we indeed are transported higher into an almost astral plane-like area, dodging arrows and icy floors underfoot, traps set by its unknown guardians, whose mystical blood replenishes our magical stores. Perhaps they are spirits bound to guard the blade. Teleporting to the area's most northern tip, we find ourselves uncannily high above Nosgoth, somehow detached, its beauty lying beneath our viewing chamber, as if we've departed the mortal realm entirely and now reside in the heavens above. Congruently, we find the Soul Reaver blade, guarded by an angelic figure. Cautiously, we pluck it from its heavenly guardian, unaccosted, remarking,
Time fades even legend, and the origin of Soul Reaver has been lost long ago. But its purpose remains. To feed on the souls of any creature it strikes. Kindred, this blade and I.
With a sense of destiny swirling about us, we equip the blade. With our rise complete, we then look at our next step, to fall. Eager to test out our new weapon, we march through the church to the western wing. Our first victim in our sights, an unfortunate priest who unknowingly partakes in our own wicked sermon. The Reaver swaths through the air, leaving the priest in pieces, drinking deeply in its own primal screech, lusting for souls that it had been starved of for an unknown time. As an aside, although its power is indisputable, this mighty weapon is said to destroy all things with one swing. Obviously, this prevents us, like axes, from drinking blood. Furthermore, there is a cost for such power. Use of the sword drains magic on a 1-to-1 ratio with the hit points of the creatures killed. For instance, if we destroy a creature with 30 hit points, it will drain 30 magic points. If we run out of magic, the Soul Reaver converts to just a regular iron sword. Obviously, it also stops us from using magic spells and objects with its two-handed nature, hence why we still rely on our flame sword for most of our grunt work ahead. Exploring the church's eastern wing, we find ourselves by a picture of the coveted Wraith armor and a Cerberus-like hound defending its dungeon's entrance. Indeed, it's only after contending with scores of these dogs, their masters, the demons, skeletons, and other various hellish undead, is our fall, shall we say, complete. At the very base of the church lies a hellish pit, complete with flaming hot magma below. Entering a skull-lined entrance to a cave, we find ourselves in a perverse place of worship, immediately discerning the true nature of the carnage before us as we stare at Malik's actual corpse strung up in the center of the circles. And it seems like this is where certain members of the circle performed their rites and rituals. In the northern corner, like the Reaver, the Wraith armor is set on a pedestal, this time made of stretched out flesh and sinew of some poor victim of indescribable torture.
This armor was spawned in the most impure of spirit forges, tempered from the seething agony of tortured souls. The metal exists only partially in the human realm, causing it to fade between tangible and ethereal states.
The Wraith armor, once equipped, we find splits damage between our health and magic meters, each taking half the blow. Pulsing in between realms in our new black armor, we cut a swath through the remaining priests now re-risen, stumbling into a picture of the aforementioned Malik versus Vorador in some twisted reverence of the Guardian, before he was felled by his bitter rival.
Above me stood a memory, etched in stained glass.
Heading through the final door to the north, at last we meet the Planer, who is responsible for the demonic horde's invasion.
Ah, what's this? I had not even realized the blade and the raiment were here. You wear those trinkets well, Kain, but I do believe that they would look better on me.
The Matriarch of Avernus, the Lady Azimuth. Her magical planing skills summon demons through runes inscribed in human blood.
We desperately lunge at Azimuth to no avail, and the Planer fades from sight. A powerful ability indeed. Following her into her lair, Azimuth, so sure of her victory, taunts.
Come to me, my children. We shall ravage Nosgoth together. So, little man, have they sent you to stop me?
We begin to dispatch her children with ease, finding the Planer immediately peppering us with vile green energy bolts, her demons resummoned when we cross the threshold of her blood seals.
My children shall rip you apart. Come, my demons, let us sup on vampire blood.
Desperate, we charge at Azimuth. However, when we breach the gap, the Planer lives up to her name, teleporting to the opposite end of the room, all the while dancing and laughing, peppering us with green energy bolts. Again, we chase her down. The flame of our blade then barely licks her hide before she escapes. Wholly frustrated, we again dispatch a demonic duo. But instead of crossing the seal, we plant ourselves firm. Remembering the soul Reaver, which cries for the Planar's soul, we realize we have but one gambit at beating the bald banshee. Divining her cheap trick, we hurl an energy bolt from across the room, which she dutifully teleports away from, to us and the Reaver's biting embrace.
For all her magic, the Lady Azimuth was little trouble. Once her demonic thralls had been dispatched, she fell quickly to my blade. Azimuth's third eye, a gift from the Pillar of Dimensions, allowed the Planer sight into other realms. The Pillar reclaims its own.